All right, everyone. It's another Big Daddy and Friends chat, fun, laugh session. And as always, I try to bring on people that obviously are friends of mine and also they're in the game. The one thing that I think a lot of people respect and appreciate is when you have someone that's been there, done it, and continuously does it at a high level. So I had to bring on this other guest that I know it's been doing it for a long time, and I don't even have to name all his credentials, so I'll just start by saying, let's welcome Vic Carucci. Vic, how you doing today?
I am great, Big Daddy, and thank you so much. When you and I met, I mean, we've known each other a long time, but when we met up at a press box at a recent Bills game, you said to me, "Hey, I'd love to have you on the show." And all I needed to hear was that. I said, "Okay, you just give me a date and a time, and we'll get it done." So, absolutely, this is really a joy to be a part of this.
Well, no, thank you. It's an honor for me because, it's an honor anytime I do this show because, being in my insurance practice for 30 some years, you run into everybody from the ups and downs, from the lows to the highs, from here, there, and all over the place. And then, you come wearing this other hat and guys are like scratching their head like, wow, Big Daddy, I didn't know you did this. And then, even when I do the stuff on Fox and Friends and Fox Business News, guys would say, how'd you do that? How'd you get that? And it's just like everything else. It's just relationships and
Right.
and doing the right thing by people and, keeping your word. So that's how, the whole thing started. And again, I'm grateful and thankful that I have you on today with us. So I obviously know the whole story. And it's funny. The other day, my brother asked me, Jimmy, how we met. And I said, wow. I said, it's been a while, but I think the best, if I stand corrected, was you were in a studio that was in Cleveland Browns, their offices.
Yep.
And I was there visiting Mike Lombardi.
Yes.
And Mike showed me around, and it was funny. I had told him, I said, look, I'm very familiar with this facility because a friend of mine helped build it. A guy named Bill Hampton, who passed away years ago.
Yes.
A very, very close friend of mine growing up. And then I was like, what is that? And he goes, oh, that's Carucci's studio. Oh, I was like, wow, I've never seen a studio inside a practice facility.
Yeah, it was, and so the whole point in my case, and I think is really something that I treasure, the idea that I had the opportunity to work for a franchise to really see the inner workings of a club. Again, in the media capacity, staying in the same lane I've occupied since I got into the business of covering the NFL in the late 1970s. First team was the Philadelphia Eagles, and I was working in South Jersey at the time for the Courier-Post, covering Ron Jaworski at quarterback, and Dick Vermeil was the head coach, and Herman Edwards was the cornerback. I mean, those are the names, and that's how far back it all went for me. Bill Berge, all the names.
Yeah.
Anyway, but as time evolved, and working for NFL.com, and then when the Browns came calling and said, "Would you like to be a part of this and start this new?" At the time, it was fairly new. I mean, there were people who had converted from working in the day-to-day mainstream media to work for teams in their media entity, and this was a similar role. But the real twist was starting this brand new radio show where the studio would exist in the facility, literally in the heart of the facility, as you saw.
Yeah.
And they built this beautiful, and it's still there, and it's gorgeous. And I want to say that the money was to the tune of 65 or 70 grand that was spent to put this thing together, and then started up. And it would air on the ESPN affiliate in Cleveland. So it would be like this. It would be a daily remote cast from there, but connected through there. So it would be on their airwaves in the middle of the day. And man, actually, it started as an early evening show, and I'm fortunate. I take no credit for it. The people who just enjoyed listening to having a show emanate from there supported it enough. So did the advertisers, that they did give it a better time slot as we went on. And you have to prove yourself. And for me, it was so fascinating to be around the decision makers, the coaches, the front office people, ownership. Everybody's around you, and you're there telling the story of the team. And I really, as I say, I've been blessed to do a whole lot, cover the day-to-day beat for newspapers, actual print newspapers, the digital stuff, and then radio, and of course video. We did it all, and it was an eye opener. You know, Big Daddy, as you know, with your brother working for a team, and you know what the team life is, right? When you're on the inside and all that goes with that. You can't appreciate that. I mean, you can, because, you know, you can talk to him and get his insights, and you have a lot of connections with clubs. But until you actually do it, you don't know what it's like. And honestly, the appreciation I have, and we weren't very successful as a club. What we were doing worked out really well. I always say that our end of it was doing well, even when the football end of it wasn't, which was, you know, kind of a tough thing, because you're telling that story. But man, it was a blast. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. You get an appreciation and for the game being on the inside. You know, it's I tell stories all the time about who is probably the most who's a person or a group of people that I appreciate the most when it comes to football? And my answer always is the equipment staff, because those guys work their tails off.
Yes.
They may not make a lot of money, but they work harder than most. And I joke around, I said, between the owner and them, they're the only two that always stick around for a long period of time. You know, because everything else is, you know, coaches are coming and going, and you know, the equipment people are such a staple in an organization that you need them for everything, whether it's in the locker room, outside the locker room, you know, buying a house, moving into a house, whatever the case. They are, as a joke, I always say they are the Ray Donovan of football.
They get it done. Yeah, They get it done. They find a way. You know, you see a helmet, a Browns helmet in the background. The equipment staff. One day, a member came up into my office setting in the studio and said, "You need some stuff in here. You need things that give you this presence." And about an hour later, he walks up with that helmet and sets it on the shelf for me. And as I was leaving, I asked permission of our human resource. I said, "Hey, is there anything from here that I know was handed to me while I was working for the club?" I said, "Take it with you." I said, "It's a great memory," and it was very nice when I had left to go back to the Buffalo News. But I'll say this too: when you have breakfast and lunch and often dinner with the people who are in that building, and usually for me it was everybody from ownership to the GM to the personnel staff, scouts, coaches. It was sometimes players, but rarely. They were on a whole kind of different schedule and system, and it was it was easier obviously to relate because there were more contemporaries with me with the folks on the staff side. You really appreciate and understand kind of what they're thinking and doing. I had a coach, the DB's coach, would every week, he said, "I'm going to do something for you that I think will help you just better understand this game." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "I'm going to give you the same test I give our DBs each week. And you study these sheets, the coverages, and study what the look is going to be offensively." And he walked me through he gave me the basics, and then said, "After that, it's on you, and then I'm testing you." I quizzed our DBs the same way in the room every week before a game. And I was proud to say I struggled a little bit at first, but proud to say that the line went up by the end of the year. And I said, "Do I get like a gold star or anything?" but it was that kind. You don't get that in any other area of covering the game. So
No, it's I had that as an offensive lineman playing at Maryland. We used to have what's called, like you said, those tests, blocking sheets,
Mm-hmm.
and they would be 8 pages of different formation, defenses and whatnot, and then they would add in like a 12th and 13th man to make sure weren't sleeping while you were doing the test to
Right.
see how you'd block it. And I'd be like, oh my God, I'm very scared and nervous not to pass this, but yeah, that makes it a whole hands-on experience,
Yeah.
doing that. But um, so what? Just real quick, what led you to be in the position where you're at? And what I mean by that is, like, you go to school, you
Yep.
say to yourself, okay, I want to do this, and then what leads you down your career path?
All right. Well, this is I love this story. As I reflect on it, as I've reflected on many years, I developed a love for the NFL as it was emerging as a true and favorite TV kind of game. Now we're going back now to the late 60s, early 70s. That's when it was really taking off as something. It's nowhere near the brand that it is now, but in its infancy, its early stages, where TV was recognizing how much this game, the content, what it meant, and then multiple networks are covering, NBC on the AFL, AFC, and then the CBS on the NFL, NFC. And I am this kid who is like in maybe junior high school, and I'm thinking, how can I get close? I'm watching this thing on TV, and it's magical, and I want to be a part of it. And then as time is going on, and I'm getting a little bigger, and it's high school or it's junior high school, like 15. I said, how am I going to get close to this game? And the first thought a young man has is play it, and you're in it. Well, I recognize my limitations athletically. I said, I'm not going to play at that level. It's just, and I understand people say, oh, keep your dreams wide open. I want to be realistic here. I don't see myself on the screen, but I can still be close to it. So coaching became a real thought, and I was the guy who I had parents who always were big urgers of urging me to read. My dad was an engineer, but he also understood that you've got to research. He was big on the whole research end. My mom was a woman of words, so is still, and thank God I still have her, but would encourage that too. And I would pull all these books out and read about coaching. And I said, this is interesting. And then I became very close with my high school coach, and I was, this sort of very bad backup player. And I knew that, again, that's what I said. I'm not going to be any good at this, but I'd love to do what you do. And he'd help me. He'd talk to me about designing plays. And give me a chance, show me what they would do. And they were on the old mimeograph, those blue, you cranked them out. And I was part of that discussion. I guess I was a pest, but maybe not so much of a pest that he didn't kick me out of his office. And I always remember him for that, for encouraging me. But then it all of a sudden it occurred to me that what about this writing thing? Because obviously I consumed the newspaper, consumed all the information there. I said, who does this stuff? And I started doing some research on that. And that's when a light went off and said, you could be very close to this game. And there was a special, CBS did this special on a guy named Bob Oates, who worked for the Los Angeles Times, covered the Rams, my favorite team growing up. Believe it or not, I grew up in the East Coast, but I was a Ram fan because everybody was a Giants fan.
Yeah.
Not many Bills fans, but a lot of New York fans. I wanted to be opposite, so I rooted for the Rams. Roman Gabriel, Merlin Olsen, all those guys, Jack Snow, and that was my team. I adopted that team. Bob Oates and was the writer who was the main writer for the LA Times. They did a day in the life of a sports writer, and I see him go, have a little breakfast with his wife, kiss her goodbye, get in the car, drive to the LA Coliseum, sits in the press box at the LA Coliseum, and I see he's on the 50-yard line, and there's my team down below him, and he's got his little typewriter, and I said, that's me. I can do that. I want to do that. And my dad, who again engineer, not a big sports guy. My family weren't big. I was really the only sports fan growing up, and the neighborhood, all the kids. But he gets me a copy of a book that he co-authored with Roman Gabriel. It's called Player of the Year, after he won it for NFL Player of the Year, NFC, whatever it was, NFL Player of the Year. And my dad couldn't find the book in any bookstores, either in our hometown or in Manhattan. He checked all the books. He said, I can't find this book. And he was going crazy. He finally tracks down Bob Oates. And Bob says, I might have a few copies in my garage. And Bob signs it, and there's a Gabriel inscription, and then it comes to me, and I got it like right the day before. I think it arrived in the mail the day before Christmas, and I still have that book, and it was inspirational to kind of see, okay, and then I'm meeting Bob years later when he was still in the business for the LA Times while I was working for the Buffalo News. Was quite a circle, that complete circle thing. But doing that and then studying journalism in college, and I knew what I wanted. I knew this is what I wanted to do. But then when you enter the business, you've got to be versatile. I mean, newspapers don't necessarily always bring you in, at least smaller ones where I started in Central New York. They don't bring you into you get to cover the sports. You got to do court reporting. You got to do the weather some days. You got to build your well-round, shaping, because it was a small staff and you could be called into anything. And then got the big break to cover it wasn't hired to cover the Eagles. I was hired to cover college sports for a Gannett paper, as I said, the Courier Post in South Jersey. And the Eagles writer left in mid-season to take another gig across the river in Philly, and they shoved me into it. I was Big Daddy. I wasn't ready. I mean, I was so over my head. I was terrified, and it was like, you got to cover the Eagles now. And I was like, okay, and it was learning on the job, and people like Jaws, and people like, as I say, Herman Edwards and the others. Vermeil was just a real interesting, fascinating, and to this day, one of my close friends, guy to cover. His energy, his 24/7 work ethic was just something to behold up close. And I learned just so much and then I realized, you talked about contacts and trust. And I learned the value of that too. And where you start to, people begin to tell you things, and you learn how to be fair and discern, but learn and mainly learn and know what you're talking about. When you bring to the table an understanding of the game and of people around it, and believe me, I had minimal amount of that then, but as time went on, I realized that's the value, that's the currency you need.
Well, I got to say this to all the viewers and listeners. Vic Carucci, ready? Sports reporter, columnist, co-host of Sirius XM NFL radio show, best-selling author, and Pro Football Hall of Fame voter. That's an impressive resume there. I have to salute you for that. And, as I learned in this game of journalism, which I did not start out in, research is always the key.
Right.
And, you learn about people. I think I've done it in a backwards manner, where I learn about people, meeting them face to face and having interaction. Then all of a sudden, when you're interviewing them, you learn a little bit more about them and start, the middle of the road. And now something that I learned, obviously, just recently, you have a new book coming out.
I do.
Tell us about that.
Yes. So I'm going to just slide over here for 1 second and bring this over. This is the blown up version of the cover. If you could see it here.
Yeah. I have it as well. I know you co-wrote that with Bill Polian and
Bill Polian. So Super Bowl Blueprints. So Bill and I did a book together back in 2014 is when it was published. We started, I guess, from 2013. By the time we got it done, it was called the Game Plan. And Bill, of course, Hall of Fame general manager, in fact, in 14, we started writing the book before he was inducted in the Hall. When the book was complete and coming out, our timing, I mean, was kind of impeccable, because then Bill gets the nod to as a contributor, inducted into the Hall. That book was a how-to of building a franchise, hiring coaches, hiring, obviously selecting players. He had like the 11 steps of what went into picking a coach, what you need, what you want. And Bill referred to operational manuals that he put together in the time that he spent, first with the Buffalo Bills, and that 4 consecutive Super Bowl run. He worked with the Carolina Panthers. He worked at the league office. He was an architect of the CBA, the foundation of what we know as the collective bargaining agreement. And then, of course, Indianapolis Colts, where he 2 Super Bowls and finally won a Super Bowl as an executive. And, the hiring of, again, Tony Dungy, and the selecting of a guy named Peyton Manning, and all that was the Edgerrin James, all those great players and coaches and Hall of Famers. And Bill, I was very close to him during the course of his time while he was in Buffalo. He was the guy too who would take the extra time to teach me the game. And at that point, it was go down the hall at training camp and sit with him with the 16 millimeter projector as he's watching the dailies from training camp practice. We could do that in his dorm. So we did that book. And then, and as I say, I've heard from any number of football people, executives, who say it's their manual. They keep it in the top drawer because there's a lot of helpful. It's not so much about Bill's life. It's not an autobiography in that sense. It's really a how-to type of book. And then the publisher approached him years later and said, "Would you like to? We'd love to have another book by you. That one did really well." And they called him and said, "What do you think?" And he reaches out to me and said, "You up for doing another book?" And Big Daddy, that's all I needed to hear. I said, "Sure, let's do it." We didn't know what the subject was, and honestly, I said yes before that, which is kind of a risky thing, because what are we doing now? What are we writing about? I'm not really sure, but I've got like some ideas, and we'll flesh it out. Okay, this was right around mid to late 2019. So he comes up with this idea of, what if we got the, sort of like he used the word blueprint, but he said, the building of these iconic teams, these great Super Bowl teams. And the window that we started to look at when we were paring it down was the early 70s Raiders, Steelers, start from there and go forward. And what's the cutoff point? We stopped it at the early 2000s before the whole Patriot reign. And that was not in any way meant to be a slight toward the Patriots. How could there be? At that, we knew, look, volumes of books have been done on the Pats. We were doing a chapter per team. And even that, I know we weren't doing justice to each of the teams, but we would really be short shrifting the Pats if we tried to do that in a singular chapter. And 2, each chapter involved the voices of those mostly retired folks who were much freer in sharing their perspective. We didn't have that with the Patriots. That's a dynasty still in the making. Tom Brady still playing, Belichick still coaching. So we decided that would be our cutoff. Just before then, Bill explains that in the introduction, but we ended up interviewing 32 luminaries, football luminaries from ownership, and the owners, 3 of the owners, of course, still very active: Jerry Jones, John Mara, Art Rooney II, with their respective teams, because obviously they had the memories and the recollection. But we ended up getting, Jimmy Johnson with the Cowboys, Troy Aikman, Terry Bradshaw, Mean Joe Green, Mel Blount. You go down the list, Tony Dungy, of course, and it was fascinating. Tom Flores with the Raiders, Ron Wolf, and it's a who's who of iconic Steve Young people. And look, we did most of them via Zoom. and I'm going to say this, they didn't stay. The average interview time was about 90 minutes. We would block out an hour with each of them. I don't think one went less than that. And we often went 2 hours or more with each of them. They weren't doing that because Vic Carucci. I'd love to say it's because, well, it's Vic here. Napoleon, it has the cachet, and the way this is presented, and I'll hold it up again. The way it's presented in oral history format, Bill leads the discussion of each of each chapter. So it's Bill's voice, and then the rest of it we weave. And I was chosen to be the person with the needle and thread, so to speak.
The weaver, yeah.
With the weaver, the conversations of the first person voices all the way through. So Bill sets the tone. Then Bill intersperses to transition from maybe occasionally, but in fact, the vast majority of transitions were so natural, and it really feels like it's almost 500 pages. Big Daddy, it feels like a documentary. It feels like each team is presented in documentary form. So very proud of it. It was a lot of work. As I said yes before really knowing what was in store, and it took a lot of time. But I am so proud of what we put together.
So tell everyone on here where we can get this incredible book.
Okay, so Super Bowl Blueprints. It's available wherever books are sold. If you're an Amazon person, and you can, get the e-download if you like to read your books that way on any device. I don't know that the audiobook is ready yet because it just was released in November. So I think that's in production. And it's wherever books are sold. And again, Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble, you name it, wherever your favorite local bookstores are. Or tell them if you don't see it on the shelf, they can order it for you. It's available. And one quick side note, Bill was recently brought in by the McCaskies to Dick McCaskey, the Bears, to help them with their coaching and GM search process. And as Mr. McCaskey indicated in his press conference, the big reason he wanted Bill aboard, I mean, obviously Bill's credentials spoke for themselves. He referenced our book, and he said that book, he read the book and said that knowledge that came out of that book was to him an indication of how you should go about trying to build it right. And Bill, and then I know the Chicago Sun-Times actually wanted to, they were doing a piece on Bill Polian to let people know who was involved in this process. And they've got this was this past Saturday, and a picture of the cover of the book was on there. So incredible pub for the book. Hopefully all of that information leads them in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the fun part. We wrap up the show where I hand over the mic to you, and obviously this is like you getting out of bed for you. So you get to ask me a question that you maybe want to learn something about me, or just ask away.
Absolutely. So my fascination, I mean, obviously what you have done and how you've, as you say, you've taken different career paths and merged them into this football life, your football life, which is remarkable in all those contexts. But it really stood out to me when I realized early on being around the Buffalo Bills, I said, wait a minute, this is his, and I saw the last name and I said, this is his brother. And I said, okay, so how does that take us inside the relationship of having a brother on a coaching staff, knowing, as we all do, that first of all, you're a person who is so out there and has so many relationships and networked, not well beyond the Buffalo Bills, and yet your brother, of course, is part of this incredible run that they're having, and it continues with their game against Kansas City, and how the two of you sort of, I mean, then we hear the Manning brothers when they were playing, and we hear that, well, you're in this world, not as a coach, but someone who knows so many people from other teams. How do you guys that bond, that trust bond, and everything, and the conversations? How do they go to where, okay, we know what my brother is saying to me stays here, and yet, you know, you learn so many things, that the temptation of keeping that all inside, because that's, you want to burst when you have a lot of information. I know that. I mean, I do. I know that.
Well, you know what? It's kind of funny. We have a relationship where we don't really get into any of that. You know, it's kind of, you know, I'll say it. We speak every day. It's funny. He calls me on his way home after work.
Yep.
Most of the time, and hey, what happened today? You know, what's going on? Blah 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 blah. And then, you know, like, and it's not always football. Last night's conversation was how the roads weren't plowed when he went to work.
Yes, I can attest to that.
And how it took him, you know, he left the house at 4:30 in the morning to make sure he would be at work on time. And,
Sure.
you know, so that was kind of that conversation. And then the drive home, well, the roads are plowed, but still we got a foot and a half out there. And,
Yep.
you know, it's a challenge. But, you know, and you know, like you say, I have relationships all over the place, obviously. And, you know, back in the heyday, and I had to say, people would say, "Oh, you're only here because the Giants are here," you know, this, that, and you get the attachment. But at the end of the day, you know, you just learn to balance. You know, I wish my brother obviously the best. You know, my relationship has gotten stronger, you know, since he's gotten there with, you know, Sean McDermott. I've known from his days at the Eagles.
Yep.
You know, Brandon Bean, another one. I've had him on the show. So, and then when you work with so many players, the relationships, you know, like you have Tremaine Edmonds, you know, playing there in Buffalo, and his two other brothers. I played with his dad at Maryland. So
Right.
now it's like, you know, you when I saw Farrell Edmonds, the first thing I wanted to do was, you got to meet my kid, you know, and
That's awesome.
you know, this is what he does, and da 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 da. So it's fun, and you know, I'll be in Kansas City this weekend, and I told my brother, I said, listen, I'm going to be there for the ride. You know, let's see if we can get you to where you need to get to, and I hope it's a sunny week in LA. You know, but. And that's and look, in Kansas City, I'm very close with Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo. I mean, the list goes on there as well. But you know, as long as you're respectful, I think guys appreciate it, and they understand, you know, where you're coming from, because of, you know, the access and the places you've been and done and seen and whatnot. So I think that's really the best way to answer that question.
I love that, and again, one of the things, the other big lesson I got from this business is people are interested in reading about things, and what's a thing. All right, the you know, you talk about the X's and O's, or the mechanical and inner workings of whatever it is. In this case, football, and how it's done. And there is a fascination to that. People are more fascinated with people. And to me, the best, whatever the best I've done in the way of stories or books or interviews in different platforms, media platforms, it's what people remember are what other people say, or the stories they tell. And we're in a constant state of storytelling. That's why I love that you do this. This is, and the vast majority of podcasts, and there's so many out there, but the ones that resonate, the ones that I think that people will take the time to listen, even if it's part of it, is where they're getting a good story told and hearing another human being's perspective, not necessarily opinions, but just a perspective on how their journey has gone. So you never lose sight of that. I think if you, and I always say this to young, you know, journalists, and that term in the business has changed a whole lot from that time I told you when I got into it, and it was a print medium, and there were no such things as cell phones hanging out there where you were consuming your content or sharing your content that way, or computers or tablets. you need to just learn to tell a good story and appreciate reading about a good story, and you learn so much.
So let's tell Vic, everyone on here, where they can follow you, find you, and
Sure.
let's grow your fan base.
Okay, so on Twitter, and now I'm not I'm a purposeful tweeter, if that makes sense. Meaning, I will put links to stuff that I do. I contribute to. Now I've semi-retired, so I retired from the Buffalo News, where I was the day-to-day columnist and writer for the covering the Bills, covering the NFL. I retired August 1st from that, but I contribute regularly, and some people say I'm failing at retirement because they see the amount of work I am doing for WGRZ TV, you know that, in Buffalo, the NBC affiliate, Channel 2, do a great job. Adam Benini's the sports director there, and I work with him, and we've developed such a great partnership there. So you could see a lot of those clips on my Twitter account, which is if you're not in the Buffalo area, it's at VICCARUCCI. And as I said, I'll share those clips when they're online, or if you go to the WGRZ YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of the stuff we do. We do a weekly show called Sports Talk Live Buffalo. It airs 7:30 each Monday night. We did one last night. And that's been burgeoning because of largely because of the Bills' success. You know, that drives the train. People want more and want to see more. And then Sirius XM NFL Radio. I've been with them when the channel, going back to when the channel signed on back in 2004. And I've had just been a remarkable. It's 18 seasons run with them. And it's been awesome. I usually do my regular weekly show is Saturdays at around either 10 or 11 a.m., depending on the time of year, in season, off season, till 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern time. And you can channel 88 if you're a Sirius XM subscriber.
I listen to you. I do listen to you, and I listened to you just last week with Pat Kerwin. You filled in, I guess, with Jimmy Miller.
Yep.
Jimmy Miller.
Jimmy Miller. And that's the other thing. I'm like first out of the bullpen quite a bit, which is great. But I'm doing just enough. It's I like doing the weekly, and then when they need me, and of course you build relationships. Pat and I have been longtime friends, and he likes, and or vice versa. If Pat's out, Jimmy Miller will reach out and say, not Jim himself, but the producer will, because Jim will say, okay, I want to get Vic on here with me. And it's awesome to know that you've got those kinds of relationships, or working with a Solomon Wilcots in the morning, or Charlie Weiss on airing it out, during the day. And we've got so many great, or late hits, Alex Marvez, Gil Brandt, the Godfather. It's such a great, I think, group of talented people. I'm a small part of it, but it's fun. And there's that. And then the books, I don't have anything in the works at the moment. I am still recovering from this 500-page, 150,000-word opus, but because it takes a lot of time and work. But I'll probably dive into something there in the not too distant future.
Pat Kerwin has played a big part in the life of my brother Jimmy. Yes. I don't know if you know that. So they're very close, and
his son. Yep.
Yes.
No, Pat's told me that story, and I. That's the thing about and Pat. Through Pat, I got to get very close with Brad Childress before, because they were very good friends. They were roommates years ago, and then I got to know. Of course, Brad was with the Browns, and then you see the people who go through. I mean, we had some outstanding coaches who were or assistants or GMs, front office people, and you learn so much from them. He was one, Rob Chudzinski, and I think of Mike Patton, all those folks who I had the real golden opportunity to get to know at that at that special level. And when they'd ask you for help or advice from a media end, I loved that. It was kind of nice to come full circle and say, okay, I've been on the other side of these press conferences and interviews. You know what? There are ways to help the person who's doing it. Hopefully do it even better, and for his sake and for the team's sake to benefit from it. Now, the mainstream media reported they don't want to hear that. They say, well, wait a minute, we want to get the gotchas and this and that. Yeah, I understand some of them, and that's not true with everybody who does it. Here's one other thing, and I don't want to be preachy, but there's a fairness that I think should be there. There's a human understanding that should be there when it comes to, and respect when it comes to dealing with folks. Look, there are going to be tough moments, a lot of second guessing, a lot of criticism. We saw that Dallas game, and my wife and I were watching on ESPN yesterday morning, and there were probably 3 segments, at least maybe 4, on that one play, that run by Dak Prescott. Yeah. And I think by the time it was on for a 3rd segment, she's looking at me and saying, we really need to see this? Weren't there other games going on? Aren't they going to talk about like the Bills? Like there was a big weekend of wild card football. Why are we still stuck on this? And I said, because somebody is watching doing the following the algorithms here, and that thing is trending as a topic, and it's the Cowboys and whatever. So some business decisions being made to stick with this as long as possible. And I understand the business end of that, but there's also a flogging that's kind of going on. And these are human beings, and when coaches get fired, fire the guy. Well, he's got a family. He's got to uproot kids. And I think that's so easily forgotten. And let's be human about it. And also, let's keep it to the business of the game. Let's be fair that way. Let's not get personal with people. But I know sometimes I'm speaking into the wind with a lot of that.
Well, listen, that's sound advice, and I think it's great. You have the respect factor, and obviously you have the credentials. So anyone who's looking to get into journalism, you should pay close attention to what Vic Carucci just said, and you know where to find him. So, Vic, once again, thank you so much, my friend, for joining me on Big Daddy and Friends, and hopefully I'll see you in Kansas City. And stay warm up there, man. I know I get the reports every night.
Your brother, I think, lives in the South Towns, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's right there. He's what takes him usually 15 minutes, I think yesterday took him like an hour to get there.
They got like a foot and a half, like you said, thereabouts. I live north of that area, and we got like 21 inches. And wow. I got to tell you, if we were doing this interview yesterday, I'm not sure I'd have been able to make it, because I spent 2 hours doing the snowblow thing, clearing out the driveway. My neighbor's snowblower died on him at such an inopportune time, so I had to bring mine over there.
Yeah,
and he's got like a real back issue, so I'm helping him out there. It was a killer day. So I realized at my advanced age, I can't be doing this stuff. My body hurts so much.
My poor sister-in-law Carolyn had to take up the slack because my brother had to go to work. So my brother's like, oh man, I wonder what she must feel like today too, and then when he gets home at whatever time it was last night, I think it was 10 o'clock, you're like, he's wondering to himself, man, I hope everything's plowed and this, that.
And that was a heavy snow. That was not light stuff. That was the real thick kind. But anyway, it was a pleasure to be a part of this with you, Big Daddy. Always great to cross paths with you. And, you've been a great friend for a long time, and we'll continue to have a great friendship.
Absolutely. So again, to everyone out there, another fun session with a dear friend, and Big Daddy of Friends will be back soon. And until next time, everyone have a great day, and make sure you follow those NFL playoffs. Everything's starting to really, really heat up now. So it should be interesting to see who gets to the next round. And I'll say this openly and publicly, go Bills.
All right.
All right. Until next time.